is Pop Culture Yearbook. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss our memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I'm Brad.
I am Pete.
And I'm Giff.
And we are we're deep into 2018 here. It's kind of a different month. We did our drafts. We talked about theme parks. We haven't gone into a deep topic yet, have we?
No, not pop.
You guys want to get in there deep tonight?
Yes. I'm going to get in there deep. Let's go deep.
All right, what'd you pick, Pete? It's your turn.
Well, one thing about this TV show that I'm going to talk about, it was on Netflix and it came out, but it's one that certainly appeals to a wide audience in Generation X because it is a callback to one of the most popular movies of the 1980s, if not the most popular.
Not only have we covered it, we talked about this TV show on that episode a little bit too, but not deep.
We did. And
Tonight
the movie itself ended so abruptly they needed to make a series so that they could resume the story. Yeah, so you kind of gave it away right there. So what we're
Pete,
talking
about, they read the description when they clicked on the link. So
that's true.
He always tries to play that.
Yeah, I do. Maybe I'm the one that writes the titles. We could choose not to show the title. We could say it's a mystery.
Let's not do that.
Every single time.
No, let's not do that. All right. Well, you write it and I write it and then you rewrite it anyway, so it doesn't matter. Right. Anyway, what is so interesting about this movie, and we are talking about Cobra Kai, the continuation of Karate Kid. But what's interesting about this one is that I can't think of another movie into TV show sequel, especially with such a wide gap. It's like 30 years between, it's actually 34 years, I guess, between the movies, and have it just picked up, not from where it left off, but from where it would be today. Like, as the characters have aged, all this time has gone by, there's new characters that are introduced, and it has pretty much all the same it's mostly the same actors where it matters, right? And so it has Ralph Macchio plays LaRusso, and you have Zabka,
Billy
right? Zabka. And so he comes back as Johnny, who we all hated in 1984, but
Bernie Stinson.
I like him a lot more. Yeah, it's really the whole cast, right? Except, of course, Pat Morita, notably, which obviously they couldn't get him because he was preoccupied with death.
They worked Harold Ramis into that new Ghostbusters movie somehow.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but that's a ghost movie, so that worked in perfectly. Anyway, so, but it picks up, and now I'm going to go. Well, first of all, before I go into my synopsis,
pump the brakes there.
Huh? What?
Pump the brakes there.
I'm pumping the brakes. I'm pumping. All right. Gifford, I would like to hear your initial thoughts about the TV show and the movie, whatever you have to say.
Well, what I love is, again, like you said, huge movie for the 80s, 1984. And so it's just, it gives you a great feeling of nostalgia with the music. With how the first episode starts off, it brings you right into the end of the first movie. You love seeing, like you said, this isn't a reboot. Like you got different TV shows that are based off of a movie, but it's a reboot. This is a continuation of the original story. So it's just fun to see the characters now as they're growing up. All these years later. So I was looking forward to this when I heard this was going to be released. I sat down and watched the first season right away. It's a great watch. It's half-hour episodes, so it's quick. It's fun. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I only watched the first 2 seasons. I haven't gotten back into it. It's one of those shows that I loved in the beginning and kind of dropped, but that doesn't mean I won't get back into it. But yeah, it's a great watch, a fun time for our generation, and I think it picks up a younger generation as well.
The final season is coming too soon too. Maybe it'll be out about the time that this episode actually is out there.
Is that right?
I don't think I have gotten a date yet, but I keep seeing that it's coming soon, and it was referred to as the final season.
So our timing is great.
Yes. So you guys talk about Netflix. I started watching the show way before you guys. This show was on YouTube Red. It was not a Netflix show.
Really?
And I received the YouTube Red shows because I was a subscriber to YouTube TV. And so I started watching this right away. The first season, I think there might have been 2 seasons out actually before it even showed up on Netflix. And so I was deep into this show already by then. And then everybody's like, "Oh my God, have you seen Cobra Kai? Have you heard of Cobra Kai?" I'm like, "Yeah, no shit. I watched 2 seasons already."
So they waited a year to drop the second season, even though it was already in the can on Netflix. Because Netflix,
I don't know. It wasn't a Netflix show.
Seasons.
Netflix took it over after it had already been out. It was a YouTube show.
Right.
How it began.
Started out on YouTube Red. I'm glad you brought that up because I actually subscribed to YouTube Red specifically because of this show.
And I could tell you why, or because this came out the same month that you, me, and Dave, our other co-host, went up to Fargo for one of our half marathons, and we talked about this show ad nauseum on that trip because it was just coming out or it just started. And we were all making sure you got to go get YouTube to watch this. So when I first heard about this show, I actually thought it was a joke. I'm like, it sounded like a joke. Like they're not going to do that, and these guys aren't going to do that. The way it was presented just seemed kind of unbelievable. But then I found it was real, and I was lucky to be able to watch it. And what I found is that I just loved it right away. And there's so many things that I loved about it. So you brought up how it is set in the present day, but what do we love on Pop Culture Yearbook more than anything? Nostalgia. And this show,
I was going to say Preacher
has
Road.
So many flashbacks, and not only flashbacks to the actual show or the movie, but it brings back these characters one by one that show up out of nowhere, and it's the original, actors agreeing to do it. And so the nostalgia factor for us is just off the charts.
Yeah.
But I'm a teacher and I teach middle schoolers. There's a bunch of them that watch. It's something like we could sit and talk about together because to them, a lot of them might have seen The Karate Kid anyway because it's iconic. But they can get into this show even without that, and so it's got that cross-generation appeal, which makes it great. I do feel like I said, I thought it was gonna be a joke at first. There is a large camp factor to this show, and I feel like it kind of increases as it goes on, but it's always entertaining. I mean, as long as you're willing to just accept that, it's not going to be an award-winning show.
It is cheesy, right?
It's always entertaining, and you just whatever. Gifford would probably give up on it, like he did.
I did,
but for the rest of us, we can just see it through to the end for what it is.
So let me say
I love
this.
it, and it's a great pick.
Yes. The lines are a little more blurred between who is the good guy and who is the bad guy in Cobra Kai than it was in Karate Kid. Even in Karate Kid, there were times where I just wanted to kick LaRusso's ass. But
he's
especially, he is the hero, but it's not that Johnny is not the hero. As the show goes on, he's trying to make a better life for himself.
The movie or the show now?
I've transitioned into the show now.
Okay, I was referring to the movie.
But yeah, you were. No, but I was transitioning. Yeah. But I'm going back now. Even especially in this first episode, which we're about to dive into, I really wanted to kick LaRusso's ass at the end of it because he
loved Johnny right off the bat. He is the star.
You do.
He's the best.
You do, because when you do talk about nostalgia, and awesome. He's the one that's listening to the awesome music, he's got the cool car and everything, but he's not. I mean, it's just his life had fallen apart, and you want to root for him. And then you got LaRusso, of course, who's this millionaire that owns a car dealership that is kind of a dick to him at the in this episode when he brings up the fight and everything, and then he tries to back off it a couple of times. But he still is kind of being a dick.
I will say, you said you root for Johnny. You kind of do, and I mean I like Johnny, but he definitely has a lot of flaws still.
He's got a lot of flaws.
You don't necessarily need to root for him. you're interested in seeing what he's going to do next, but he's certainly not like a heroic guy, that's for sure.
Well, and you want to see him pull himself up from where he's at. I mean, he's a tragic figure, and like Pete said, he's the guy who drives the cool car. Yeah, cool car for 1989. You know, I mean, he's got the old Pontiac Thunderbird, but I mean, you know, he's just that guy who peaked in high school, and everything's just gone downhill for him, and you want him to pull himself up by his bootstraps, and see him trying to do good.
Speaking of that,
in his own way,
we'll get to more of the details. But one of the questions I had watching this time was like, okay, but why would he fall so hard? He came from this wealthy family. He had everything. So how did he get here? And the first episode does address that. Mm-hmm. And actually, I'd written that question down as I was watching it, and like the next scene, 5 minutes later, was where the stepdad came. You get that, so yeah. So I like that they addressed that because it made it realistic. Because otherwise, you're like, he's not going to do that. He came from all this money. His parents will make sure that he's okay, but that's not the way it went.
But it was his dad. He had terrible role models, because you got to include Kreese in that too, and the whole bad Cobra Kai message that was sent is strike first, strike hard, no mercy, is the whole thing. And it's like it's an opposite message. It's the opposite message that Miyagi was always teaching. And so who was a very positive role model, like karate is only for defense and all of this kind of stuff.
Teaching you balance in life, and, you know, not just for karate, you know, I mean, it was the whole life, you know.
So you see that he had multiple bad role models, and so bad people around him, and so that of course unfolds to an even greater degree as the series progresses.
And so we don't see his mom. His mom is dead, right?
I think so, or either that.
That's why it's only the stepdad who's left.
I think so. That's what he said. I promised your mom I would always take care of you.
And it turns out that his stepdad, who you don't really know from the movie, is a real asshole, and that's how it all got to where he is now. So
was it I actually didn't pick up as a stepdad.
He said stepdad,
real dad.
Nope,
okay,
stepdad.
And that he just called him Sid because I thought he hated him and just didn't call him dad. But okay. All right. Well, if you guys don't mind, I wrote a little synopsis about the first episode, and we're primarily talking about it. Oh yeah, you're gonna love this one. This is a great synopsis. All right, here goes. In the first episode of Cobra Kai Season 1, we start with a flashback to the 1984 All Valley Karate Championship, where Johnny was famously defeated by Daniel's crane kick. Fast forward to the present day, Johnny is living can defend. Johnny is living a destitute life, battling alcoholism and struggling to make ends meet. His prized possession is his car, which holds sentimental value for him. One day, Johnny encounters a young teenager, initially dismissing him as just another immigrant in his apartment complex. However, he witnesses the teen being bullied at a convenience store, and, using his karate skills, Johnny intervenes to save him. Unfortunately, what?
I mean, that's not really why he got involved.
What do you mean?
He got involved because those kids hit his car.
Well, yeah, but he
didn't care about Miguel.
He
only got involved because they hit his car, and then it led to the whole thing. And I think that's important because that's Johnny. That's what you said it was his prized possession.
Yeah. Okay. Well, fair enough.
So anyway,
I did not have that. I guess my synopsis is not good enough for you.
No, it's good. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. All right. So anyway, Johnny does intervene to save him, regardless of the reason. He does intervene to save him. Unfortunately, this act leads to Johnny getting arrested. After being bailed out by his distant stepfather, I just had father, but I'm adding stepfather, Johnny has a difficult conversation that leaves him feeling rejected and unwanted. Seeking solace, he heads out that night, but ends up having his car destroyed by some teenage girls. Johnny gets a good look at one of them, but can't stop them before they drive away. When the tow truck arrives, the unfriendly tow truck driver, directs Johnny to Danny LaRusso's car dealership. Anxious to avoid being seen by his old rival, Johnny tries to retrieve his car discreetly, but in the end, he's awkwardly spotted by Danny. As they exchange uneasy pleasantries, Danny introduces Johnny to some friends, revealing that it is revealed that one of the teenage girls responsible for wrecking his car is in fact his own daughter, Samantha.
Dun, 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 dun.
The revelation of Samantha's involvement sparks a surge of rage in Johnny, further fueling the tension between the two rivals. Determined to prove himself and confront his past, Johnny decides to resurrect the Cobra Kai dojo, which sets the stage for an emotionally charged rivalry.
Nice. Well, and what I love is that what gets him over the top to start his own dojo again is him watching Iron Eagle on TV one night. Followed quickly by the commercial break, which shows Danny LaRusso on, promoting his car dealership. So it was just that beautiful little fix.
Yeah. I'm wondering, did Iron Eagle came out the same year as Karate Kid? And I'm wondering if that's kind of a connection. I'm wondering if that was kind of a connection that they were kind of going for. Like if they were in the theaters at the same time or what? Because it seems like they might have been close.
Iron Eagle was 86.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep.
So you mentioned the beginning, and I had forgotten how it started because I've watched all the series, but it's been a while. And I love that it starts with the actual movie. Like it's a flashback, correct, but it's the act. You hear Daniel LaRusso's going to fight, and it's great because it draws a guy like us in immediately, but it also provides that recap. If you're a kid watching this and don't know about it, it gives you that information that you need. So it's a brilliant way to start it and get it off to a kicking start.
Well,
oh my God. Well done, Brad.
What I think though is if you're, like your middle schoolers watching this for the first time and they're not familiar with the movie, what you see of Johnny is a student questioning his teacher's teachings on the mat and not wanting to sweep the leg. You don't see him as the jerk that you got to know through the movie. So if your first introduction to Johnny LaRusso is the beginning of this show, I'm sorry, Johnny Lawrence. If that's your first introduction to him, you see him as just the loser.
Interesting observation.
Not as the bad guy of the original movie.
That's again what you bring to this show. That was good.
Although that is brought to light as the series progresses.
Yes.
But they did leave out though the key line at the end of the movie, which was what, Brad?
You're all right, LaRusso?
You're all right, LaRusso.
Thanks.
Well, the one thing I was disappointed in with this opening series scene is you don't see Mr. Miyagi with the little nod of the head when he goes for the crane kick. And I was like, well, maybe they didn't get permission to show Pat Morita, but then you see him later on. And so I was like, oh, why did they cut that part out? That's
you're giving me goosebumps right
now.
It's because that's a triumphant ending for LaRusso. But the point is that it was a defeated ending, not triumphant for Johnny.
Yes. Well, and
so he's just laying on the mat, head face down.
It goes from that, and that part is not from the movie, him lying face down, but it transitions right into, and you see right away that this series is about that role reversal because he's in bed with Chips, a Coors Banquet, and then he's grilling bologna.
Yep.
So you learn right away that Johnny is destitute.
The implication, of course, is that he peaked at that very moment. That was the highest moment of his life, and then it just all fell apart because of that one defeat.
Which gives him the motivation to harbor against Daniel LaRusso for years.
Correct.
Because he blames it all on him, even though it's not really his
right
fault,
or wrong.
It gives him that thing to take his anger out at.
And the fact that, like we said, LaRusso became the successful millionaire, car dealership. You see his face all over town with a hot wife.
She's not even in this episode, is she?
No,
she's in the beginning of the second.
That's right.
But But and of course, Johnny has his dead end job where he's not appreciated. He hung the TV in the wrong spot, and this one woman is just terrible to him.
Yep.
I noticed another callback right away with this too. So Miguel approaching him first of all, Johnny lives in the same place that Daniel LaRusso lived.
No, it's not.
It sure looks like it.
I didn't think it was. I watched it this time. I'm like, that's the outside right there, Reseda.
I thought so too.
Nope. It on the outside of Danny's apartment complex was South Seas. I thought the same thing. I looked it up last night when I was watching.
Okay,
it looks like the same damn thing.
Hold on.
But it looks the same. And the point is, when Miguel approaches him, it tries to set up the Johnny or the Daniel and Miyagi thing. Although they didn't get along right away either at first. Mm-hmm. But in Miguel's apartment, they have an issue with their water pressure. And that's the same reason that Pat Morita first came to their apartment, because he's supposed to fix that. And so that was I just noticed that this time, like, this is like all the same stuff repeating. And if you know the movie, you can pick up on some of those little touches.
Is it possible that it's the same complex, but they just changed their name after 34 years?
Well, that's what I thought it looked the same, but
I thought it looked the same too.
That could be, but it's not. It's not. The signage isn't the same, is what I'm saying.
The way that this show is set up, you would sure assume it would be the same, because that's what they're doing. But
right, and it's just I love that. You know, again, they hit you with the nostalgia again when he pops in his car and starts it up, and Nothing But a Good Time is playing from Poison.
The music is
fantastic. on his way to work.
Pontiac Firebird.
Right. One of the things I love is when he was talking to Miguel after he got beat up by the other high school kids. And, you know, he comes to Johnny and, you know, asks for his help, you know, because he saw Johnny kick these kids' ass with awesome karate. And Johnny's advice to him is stop being so annoying. Maybe you won't get your ass kicked. Which I love.
Which is good advice.
Because that is why LaRusso got his ass kicked so much in the original movie.
Yes, that's true.
Freaking annoying.
That's true.
He was.
Yeah.
I want to jump back to Pete. You brought up how he got berated by the woman because he hung the TV in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
There was a great line in that scene too, because he mentioned how she let him use the bathroom. And she goes, I didn't know you were going to take a shit. That was so funny. And then he gets fired, of course, from his job because he goes he doesn't call her a bitch, but he says you're bitching at me, and she takes it as that, and then he gets fired. So
got translated, I suppose. But he was right. He did not directly call her a bitch.
Right.
But he did say it's basically the same thing.
He still spoke to her in a way that he shouldn't as working for her.
Right.
I would have been as frustrated as he was, though, given the circumstances. And that's where
he tried to make it right.
It's a scene.
That's the thing. You feel for him. You connect with him.
Because she said on the wall across from the door, and then he looked, and there is a door that's across the, and so it's like it could have easily. It was an honest mistake.
Yep.
And just miscommunication.
And he was willing to remedy it. He said, you know, I just can't do it right now. You know, I'll come back tomorrow and I'll fix it all up. But of course, she wasn't having any of it. One of the things I like about this is that Daniel made his fortune selling cars. And that was a big thing in the original Karate Kid movie with Mr. Miyagi and his cars. He had the 4 cars that, of course, Daniel waxed on and waxed off with his training. And he carried that through and, you know, made a good life for himself with cars. So I thought that was another nice tie-in with.
And then, of course, they threw in a bonsai tree for every customer.
Oh yeah.
So the biggest.
Oh my God, his ads are so annoying. What?
And then he's like, I'm karate chopping my prices in half.
That was the only thing that really, really bothered me about this first episode is he still looks awful doing karate. You know, Johnny's out there beating the crap out of these 4 kids in the parking lot.
That great in that scene.
He looked a lot better. He looks coordinated for a 50-something-year-old guy doing karate.
He is, but he just looked a little slow.
He did, but he should. But LaRusso looks so awkward and haphazard and uncoordinated, and it just oh man, that's rough to watch. But I just think it's such a great way to kick off this series. Again, we had all the scenes from the first movie when he's driving around, when he's drunk, right before his car gets smashed by those girls, and they're showing like Allie, right? That's her name, and showing the scenes from the just throughout the first movie, and they got head games from Foreigner on, which is awesome.
Well, and I was going to say, this is not a high budget show really, but there's a little bit of budget put into the music. Instead of having like this just 80s sounding music, they've got some good songs in there.
Yeah.
Right. Songs that he would be listening to.
Yeah.
Like a guy like that would be his music. And I would much rather hang out with him than LaRusso.
Right.
Now, okay, well, before we get to that car dealership again, you did mention his name, Gifford, when I brought up the stepfather before we started. So I had forgotten too. I mean, that's a pretty great cameo. Ed Asner shows up just out of nowhere to play his stepfather. He's not in it anymore, is he?
He's dead.
Yeah,
well, I know,
dead,
but I mean in that season though.
I think he was only in that season. Did he die in
just
the,
that
in
episode?
The show?
He would have died not too long after that.
No, but I thought he died actually in the storyline of the show. But I could be missing. I could be wrong.
Oh, well, I bet
be.
he did, because that probably was part of Johnny's development and moving on.
Could be.
But so him showing up is cool. I mean, that's
and the great
somebody you recognize.
The great part about it is the role reversal. So you've got Johnny getting his car run into by these brat teenage girls. And of course, Daniel's daughter is in the back seat. She wasn't driving. It wasn't her fault, but obviously she didn't come forward. She didn't say anything to her dad about, hey, we were in an accident. So even she's complicit in just being a bad person, and LaRusso's not necessarily a bad guy, but he definitely is, kind of pompous, and he has his comfortable life and he doesn't want to give that up. And of course, when he sees Johnny, he eggs him on a little bit, talking about, how he kicked his ass or he won. And, he's obviously told this story many times to coworkers because they bring it up. Hey, this is the guy whose ass you kicked, right? He's not necessarily a horrible person, but he's definitely a braggart. And, it's seen the other way as, Daniel being, on top and doing well and maybe kind of a jerk, and Johnny being the one who's down on his luck and poor and living in the, the apartment building and everything like that. So it's definitely more complicated. Like you said in the beginning, it's not a black and white situation. These characters are flawed, and it's fun and that's why I think it works as a show too, because you have a lot more time to suss out these different things.
I like the fact, and I remember it being a big deal. Like everybody was saying that in the original Karate Kid, the crane kick was an illegal kick, and it never would have been allowed in an actual tournament like that.
That's never been explained, has it?
They worked it in to the storyline, and it added another reason.
Illegal kick.
Right. It was another reason that they wrote that in, and it was another reason for Johnny to justifiably hate LaRusso.
Here's the thing about that. So in the third Karate Kid movie, they're back in the States and he's back at the tournament. And that was the thing. You couldn't kick in the head when he went back to that tournament, but you could do stuff with the legs. So it was kind of opposite of the first one. But when LaRusso said that was an illegal kick, he also got a point in that match. You saw in the beginning scene where he swept the leg, like kicked him off balance with one leg, then came back over the top with his other leg and kicked him in the head. LaRusso or Lawrence did. So a kick to the head's a kick to the head. They both got points in that match for a kick to the head. So I don't know where Johnny's getting all high and mighty about it being an illegal kick.
Well, it obviously wasn't, because they would have called it illegal if it was. So, but
you would think. I don't know. I don't know much about karate. I don't have a black belt, believe it or not. But I'm just going with what I remember it being said, and I like that they worked it into the storyline.
I had another question about the end here. So he ripped up the check from his dad, right?
Yep.
It's from Sid.
Yeah. So
stepdad.
he went from having nothing. I don't know if I missed something this time because I was taking a note and got distracted. How did he so quickly have the money to go set up this dojo?
That I have no idea.
It was okay because I always thought he took the check and used it for that, but he ripped it up. Unless, or does that come up again in the next episode or something?
No, it didn't come up. No, you never know how he had that cash because in subsequent episodes, like when he's teaching Miguel, a guy comes by to do like a inspection and gives him a list of things that he needs to update in order to, actually be able to be open. So I don't know where he would have gotten the money
to rent this place. Yeah. I mean, it would have made sense to have him just use that, even though he didn't want his money, but just to say, okay, I'm going to use it for this purpose, but that's not what it was, huh? So
no. So I was so surprised by Pete for only picking 1 half-hour episode to cover. I did go ahead and watch Pete.
Yeah,
it's worth the rewatch. It's worth an initial watch. Of course, that's our biggest hope by doing this podcast is we either.
Well, so this first episode focuses on Johnny the most. Yeah. The second episode focuses on Daniel, right?
That is correct. Yeah. Starts with Daniel. It starts with Dean Martin. "Ain't That a Kick in the Head?" Is the initial song, and he's waking up in his mansion next to his beautiful wife and making breakfast for his kids, and just showing the charmed life of Daniel LaRusso now.
With that hot wife.
Right. Is there anything then, you don't need to go through all 8 episodes in detail, but is there anything that stood out throughout that first set?
Yes. As we talked about.
Would you care to elaborate?
Yes. As we talked about these characters being flawed, Johnny is definitely a guy who's stuck in his ways. He's very crass, which is hilarious to listen to. Like, I think at one point, Miguel, he punched Miguel or something, and Miguel took out his inhaler. And of course, Johnny grabs it, throws it up against the wall, and says, "You can't have asthma anymore." You can't be a badass if you've got asthma.
And that's one of the things that makes him kind of hard to root for, because you mentioned Pete in your synopsis that he referred to him as another immigrant. I mean, Johnny is very much set in the 80s and he has not grown with the times.
No.
And he doesn't understand the world and how to really treat people. So yeah, it's he's set in that Cobra Kai mindset still.
Yep.
Which
not
makes
quite
him
as
hard
rough.
to before
it adds to the realism, because we all know people like that.
Oh yeah, it's totally realistic. It's
one of my favorite lines of his in a later episode was he got some more students finally, and one kid mentioned that a teacher said that he may be that the student may be on the spectrum, and his response was, "Well, get off of that." I mean, he has no idea.
He doesn't know what anything
being on the spectrum is.
That's what makes it funny. That's
right. And that's one of the funny running jokes is his So we talked about dated technology in the Swingers one. Like, Johnny is set in all those times. He doesn't understand anything new. He wouldn't know how to run a cell phone. He
has a flip phone still.
Yeah, of course. That's perfect. He just doesn't get anything new.
No, which is surprising because he installs TVs for a living, or he did.
Right.
You think
he probably couldn't turn it on and set it up, though.
Maybe. Right. I don't know.
See, the TV in his apartment was a tube TV.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Good observation.
Yeah, so that's one of the funniest things, or one of the fun things about it is, maybe it's an indictment on my character that I laugh at the, ridiculously racist, sexist things, just dumb things.
It's meant to be funny.
It's meant to be funny. He's that kind of that drunk uncle, who says all the wrong things at the family get-togethers.
It's part of his character. It's how he was raised, and he's trying to better himself as the series progresses.
That's the admirable. You see him every once in a while, trying to figure things out, and it's funny that way too, and it's admirable.
And he actually establishes a positive relationship somewhat with LaRusso.
Right. And as the show goes on, if you haven't watched it, there's all these different twists and turns, and they're enemies, and then they kind of have to, work together. And by far, my favorite scenes in this series are always when those two are together. There's a part, I don't remember what episode it's in, I'm sure you watched it, Gifford, but it's one of the first times where that really happens, where they're driving. I think it's in Johnny's car, and they're listening to 80s music, and they're almost bonding for a second there.
Yep.
And of course it goes wrong. But that was like the highlight scene of that first season that I remember, because it was so well done, and it's funny, and you smile, and it's just great.
Well, and I think Johnny's attitude adds to the spirit of the 80s. We talk about how this, pulls from 84, the original movie to now, and Johnny's the guy with his backwards thought process, just always reminding you of the 80s, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So, which helps the nostalgia factor too,
right,
even though
exactly.
it's not always a good thing.
It's not,
but
good
it makes
nostalgia.
you rethink things that you thought and did, and people you knew. It takes you back to a different time period.
Yes, it does. Yep.
Brilliant show.
Anybody else have anything to add before we transition?
Well, the only thing I was going to say is, so the thing you asked what stood out to Gifford, the thing that stood out to me the most about this series that I can remember, and I'm going to use this to transition, Pete.
This is my transition.
Well, season 2 ends. Do you want to go ahead? Okay, you do it then.
I was just going to say season 2, the way it ends.
This was the most other memorable part to me, which was shocking, and it was like it went on too long, and it was stupid, but it was great, and so
there was a big fight that broke out, because as the show progresses, of course, they develop these dojos, and so there are wars that start happening between them, and the apex of this entire thing happens in the season finale of season 2, and I don't want to give it away, but something very tragic happens at the end of that episode.
Well, it's a big school fight.
It's a huge school fight, and it's one of the most violent scenes that I've ever seen,
and it goes on
any TV show
10
ever.
Minutes.
And it's kids too. It's school kids.
Where are
the
the
more
adults?
Disturbing. Yeah, there's no. Yeah. It's like
that was one of the reasons I stopped watching it. I was like, "Holy crap! Really, is this where this is going?"
And it was meant to be, but it is so over the top that it's like I could see it's in one way it turned me off too. Like, this is fucking insane, but at the other hand, like, I got to keep watching too. So it's like.
But it plays into earlier, Brad, you said there's a camp factor to it. There's a campiness to it. And they're deliberately doing it to make it kind of funny or just like just blow it out of the water. How violent and destructive can we get with this one scene? And it is just, it's bananas.
Bananas. That's the best description of it.
The transition is into our draft that we did for tonight. I asked everybody to come up with their top favorite violent movies, TV shows, or whatever, any pop culture. And that's what we're going to be drafting tonight. We're each going to draft our top 5.
Did we all do movies, though?
I did mostly movies, but I've got one TV show on my possible list.
So there might be, like with Tom Hanks, where I had Saturday Night Live, there might be 1 or 2 outliers.
There you go.
But yeah, it could be. But it can be anything.
I have all movies. I was just curious.
What I was saying before we started recording, there could be songs that are violent that you could pick if you wanted to.
Right.
It could be anything from pop culture. So we drew straws before we started recording, and I am the number 1 pick. That I will be followed by Gifford, and then Brad with the number 3 pick.
And just to clarify, Pete just said violence, so it's our own definitions of
can be taken many different ways.
So this is a very wide category that we could be choosing from.
That's correct. That's what's beautiful about our show. We can do whatever the hell we want. It's our show. Correct. All right. My number 1 pick will be Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction.
Excellent. What did you find super violent? Was there a specific scene?
I don't know. There's a lot of it. I can't even. It's been a long time since I've seen it. I just remember thinking it was really violent. And
I was actually, when I was looking
on a spot like that.
It's on my list, but I was trying to remember like what compared to some of his other movies, like what was this one as violent? I can't remember specific.
When I think of this one, I think of the GIMP scene in the bottom of the electronics store. That basement scene was pretty rough.
Well, and then the guy gets blown up in the back of the car, right? And they got to go clean the car up. I mean,
gets his face blown off. Yep. All right,
definitely fits the category.
I'm going to take another Tarantino film here. I'm going to take Kill Bill Volume 1. The scene in particular, the fight with the crazy 88s, and then also the anime scene in there. Very violent. Loved every second of both of those scenes. So, yeah.
Okay, we got a bingo, guys.
Oh boy.
I'm going with Tarantino too. My personal favorite Quentin Tarantino movie is and they scalp some Nazis, Inglourious Bastards.
Nice.
This movie, first of all, contains the greatest scene in the history of cinema, the first 20 minutes of this movie, which really has no violence until they shoot the floor up.
Oh.
But it goes on, and there's plenty of violence, and like I said, scalping and things happen. But that first scene is like so different because it is so like just intense in there. So I will go to my grave saying that's the best scene I've ever seen in a movie.
It's up there. I'll give you that. That was my introduction to Christoph Waltz, and he is my, he's got a place in my heart.
So I don't know if we're going to do any more Tarantinos, but we've certainly already
few more on here.
I'm going away from the Tarantino vibe here, and I'm going with one of my favorite movies of all time. Although I haven't seen it in a really long time, I should now go back and watch it. Tombstone.
All right.
Tombstone. Is that okay?
There's a fight at the OK Corral, right? That was pretty at the end.
Yeah, I just haven't seen it in a while, so.
When Johnny Ringo gets shot, there's some tough stuff in there.
It's just such a again, it's like, am I going for the most violent movie ever, or am I going for the best movie that contains violence, right?
That's the question.
Take that how you want it. But to me, this falls under the category of a great movie that contains violence.
All right. My number 2 pick is 2008's Rambo. There's a scene in this movie where he hops on the back of the truck with a 50 cal mounted and just absolutely buzzsaws through all of these guys. I mean, people's legs and chests and heads just exploding when they got hit. It was a scene, man.
Okay, so I got to ask. You said 2008.
Yep.
Is this Sylvester Stallone? I don't know anything about this movie.
The name of the movie is Rambo. Not Rambo. It's not First Blood or First Blood Part 2 or Rambo 3. It's just Rambo.
Yeah, the Rambo that we all know is Rambo First Blood.
I know.
This is 2008.
I wasn't aware there was a 2008 version.
There was one after this yet, too, called Last Blood. Yeah, in 2019. Which was pretty rough as well, with Stallone playing John Rambo. But yeah, the 2008 Rambo was pretty harsh.
All right, I'm going to go with another movie that I absolutely love, using Pete's kind of criteria there. But the end of this movie in particular, when they're on the houseboat, is so violent.
That's my next pick.
Cape Fear. Could you be there? You offered me something hot.
That was my exact next pick.
That movie is so great, and he is such a bad guy, and it ramps up throughout until that boat scene, and he just looks like he's melting at the end because he's gone through so much. And there's the scene too where he bites the chick's face when he's God, that was a good choice.
Well, I'm glad you liked it.
I do. Well, I love that movie so much. It's just.
This is a movie that we are going to go into detail, I think, in October. It's a movie, Brad, that is very near and dear to you and me, especially Reservoir Dogs.
Yes. Going back to Tarantino. Excellent. I am going to take a movie that originally got an X rating for violence and then was pared down so it could be put in movie theaters, and that is RoboCop.
I knew it. I learned that by doing this podcast and listening to others.
Mm-hmm. And listening to others.
Well, I've heard it on other ones too.
What?
Okay, I'm going to continue on with another one of my really favorite movies. And there's different scenes in this one, but there's a scene at the beginning that is extremely memorable where Edward Norton kicks a guy's face on the curb with his mouth open, basically
killed him.
Splits his head open and killed. Yeah.
Yep.
American History X.
That was on my list.
Oh my God, what a great movie.
Just that one scene will do it.
That's enough to do it.
That'll do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
But you've got all, it's just that all these Nazi people in there. I mean, it's got
rough.
a lot of good reasons to pick that one.
Yep.
Maybe we're starting a theme here now again too, because we got 2 American movies in a row. I'm going with American Psycho.
Oh
which
yes,
which we have discussed on the show.
It was a lost episode. It hasn't actually.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We should.
But we did at one point.
Brad does not like Nazis. Let's just put it that way. We got Inglourious Bastards and American History X on his list. I don't like Nazis either, but Brad's willing to say it out loud with his picks.
I will not shy away from my opinion that Nazis are bad. You can mark that one down.
They're bad, okay?
Agreed. I'm just saying. I just have to throw. I don't want people to be like, well, Pete's sure stayed awful silent from everyone else talking about how much they hated Nazis. So I'm going to clarify. I do hate Nazis.
What's the next one?
All right, Pete. No, Pete, go American History X or American Psycho.
I did American Psycho.
Okay.
So you're going to pick American Beauty?
No, I am
American
not.
Pie.
Although there was some violence in the beginning of that movie when he was boxing a clown in the shower.
Jesus Christ. Well, you really thought of that one quick.
I am going to go with, so remember when we did horror movies and we did the different genres? This one would be under the body horror type stuff. I'm going to go with Hostel. There was some pretty rough stuff with those, torturing people, and there was a blowtorch in there and an eye hanging off of a face, and
that's that one. I don't watch those movies, but that's one that I sat by myself and I came across it, and I'm gonna watch it, and I watched it. I got myself through it.
Stomach turning.
Yeah.
So my violent list here is turning into like almost a top 5 favorite movies of all time list here. I could sit and watch these right in a row.
There's some great movies.
My number 4, and again, it's a long movie. There's a lot of parts that maybe don't have violence in it, but it's bringing back Robert De Niro again. A lot of stabbings, a lot of bad people. Goodfellas.
Yes.
Yeah. That was my next one.
Some baseball bats.
Oh yeah, there's so much.
God, that was so bad.
Joe Pesci is not a good guy.
No. Well, yeah. Well, and then the way he goes down in Casino too is pretty rough.
Oh yeah, I got that one listed too. I just like Goodfellas better.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm with you.
I gotta pick this one because this is one of our best, probably our very best pop culture yearbook episode ever. I'm picking Roadhouse.
Christmas Vacation.
Roadhouse, ripping throats out.
That
Nice.
qualifies, right?
Was there anything besides that scene that I don't remember if there was? I mean, that's the scene.
There's a whole shootout at the end, wasn't there? Where the guy, everybody's getting killed. Polar bear, yeah.
That's true. The guy had the shotgun, and there was a lot of other stuff.
A lot of killing in that.
That's right. That third act went bonkers.
Well, and there was a big bar fight early in the movie too. So
damn good.
Nice.
And more.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. And take out the trash. All right, I am going to go with the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oof. We talked about that one, too. We got a Halloween episode on it.
We did. A lot of gore. Actually, there was no... The great part about that movie is you never see, like...
I was going to say, there isn't that much, is it?
Well...
There isn't. There's gore, but there's not like direct killing as much.
Well,
as
there is direct killing, but there's not like a knife puncturing skin or anything like that. Like there was the guy who got hit over the head, blunt force, but there was no like really cutting up of bodies and stuff that you saw. So
that you would expect.
Yeah,
you would expect to see all that happening.
Definitely still freaky, and you see a lot of freaky stuff in it, and yeah, there's plenty of violence. So
again, your definition of violence. I am going to close this one out with a movie that we brought up once. I can't remember why. It came up not too long ago. This was a kind of small surprise movie that my wife and I went to see. It is Ryan Gosling, and it is a role unlike most of his others, and that is Drive. And there are some seriously surprising, shocking, violent scenes in that movie.
Yeah.
And it's an awesome movie too.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
That's my last one.
That rounds out our whole list. Nobody picked Three Amigos. There's a lot of.
Well, I got more listed here. Are we going to go?
Yeah, I got quite a few.
Anyone else with a comment?
So I had Die Hard. I mean, that gets pretty violent.
I had that on my list.
He's covered in blood all over the place.
Yep.
Yeah.
Django Unchained. Nobody mentioned. I didn't want to go into any more Tarantino movies. Full Metal Jacket.
Oh God.
The Scream movies, particularly the new ones, the one that just came out last, the Scream movies have some very, very graphic kill scenes, and especially if you've seen the newest one or two.
Mm-hmm.
Another great movie, Saving Private Ryan, has a lot of violence in it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the beginning scene!
List.
Holy crap!
Yeah, especially the beginning.
Oh my God.
Fight Club, anyone?
Oh my God! How do we not put? Yeah.
Well, it's not as much killing, so...
No, it's plenty of violence.
Full of violence and
full
graphic.
Of raw
have to be.
violence. Yes.
You mentioned Casino. I got a couple more. So, Basic Instinct. That one might not have thought of right away, but that is a pretty graphic and some really good kill scenes with the nudity at the same time.
Right.
And then here's one that was more of a comedy, but if you've seen it, it's extremely graphic, but in that kind of funny horror way, Zombieland.
Oh, yeah, that's outstanding.
Zombieland has got some
love Zombieland.
Gross stuff in it.
Yep.
So those are my other considerations. I could have picked a lot of those.
Sure.
I had on my list, I had Godfather, Misery.
Oh, yeah, Misery. Specific scene there.
Yeah, exactly. I had Batman, the Christopher Nolan Batman. There's a lot of that was actually pretty violent. Taxi Driver.
See his pencil disappear?
Yeah, exactly.
Taxi
Driver, very good.
Unforgiven, Terminator and Terminator 2, Jaws, which is probably my favorite movie of all time, other than like the Three Amigos and Vacation, that genre. Like of the movies I would consider like well-made, good, dramatic movies, Jaws is my all-time favorite. I had Stranger Things that's my one TV show.
Oh, there you go. That's your TV show.
Another one we've discussed on this show, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and Silence of the Lambs.
Nice. Yeah, I thought about that one too. That one's more kind of in your head.
That's why why I didn't really pick it. It's more psychological, but
I had on my list, I had 12 Years a Slave. That one is a brutal movie to watch. Brad mentioned the Scream series. I'm going to do follow up with the Saw series. Yep. Some very, very brutal scenes in there. Natural Born Killers. Mm-hmm. A movie that came out 2 years ago with who's the guy from Better Call Saul, for Pete's sake?
Are you talking about Nobody?
Nobody.
I watched that. Yeah, that's got some.
I loved that movie. Very violent there. And then I picked out Jason X from the Friday the 13th when Drowning Pool song Bodies comes on, the Let the Bodies Hit the Floor, and then he just goes on this sweet killing spree. That was awesome. Kickboxer from Jean-Claude Van Damme, I thought was one of his more violent ones. And then a lesser known movie called Bone Tomahawk. And
I saw that listed when I was looking up movies. I don't know what it is.
Oh boy. Yeah,
you've seen it?
Yeah, I watched it because I saw it listed as, this was years ago, but yeah, a guy basically gets almost cut completely in half with a tomahawk.
Oh, you could have picked Walk Hard.
Oh, Walk Hard.
Oh, there you go.
It's the worst case of a guy getting cut in half I've ever seen. I think we lost Gifford.
I think we lost.
Good thing we're at the end here.
We are at the end. Hey, back. We got him. It looked like he froze up a little bit, but that's totally fine.
All the violence.
Yeah, too much violence. Yeah. Hey, Gifford. I mentioned earlier in the show, I hope you were listening, what's the one thing we love even more than nostalgia on this show?
Preacher Row.
That's right. Good job.
Thank you.
All right. That was a good, very violent episode. I wouldn't have your kids listen to this episode.
No,
but it was good.
I appreciate the subject. It was an excellent pick, Pete.
This one might get an X rating and have to be toned down a little.
Maybe.
Yeah. I'm not doing any editing.
Perfect.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Standing on my own 2 feet. No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your song is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. And start to me on my back. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared but there's nothing I can do.